Hello, greeting boxing fans, historians. This is the Historical Boxing Society podcast, and this is the historical overview of the great middleweight gladiator Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. He stood 5'8" and weighed up to the mid 150s marks. Middleweight fighter. Jack Dempsey was born near the Curragh on December 15th, 1862, and his parents brought him to New York while he was a hardy youngster. Although little is known of his early career in those tough, bare-knuckle days, his first notable encounter took place on April 7th, 1883, and from that date on until he fell victim to the treacherous pivot punch 6 years later, he claimed the podulence of multitude as a boxer and a gentleman. 158 pounds of strength, strategy, grace, and chivalry speedily won him the flattering title of the Nonpareil of the ring, meaning no man was his equal. A man of sterling honesty and gentlemanly bearing in that raw pioneer period when good qualities were at a premium, could not fail in illicit grudging word of praise even from those who sampled the dead accuracy of the flashing hands. His uncanny skill and questionable pluck could only really be achieved when this gray-eyed wizard with light brown wavy hair was pitted against some fierce caveman battling with desperate ferocity. The good-looking Irishman easily became the idol of the boxing public. He was a master of strategy who opened up a new chapter in ringcraft with his powerful arms and relentless, slender legs. His contests numbered hundreds while he suffered only 3 defeats. The new favorite was hailed as champion even before he met and defeated George Fulljames. Dempsey fought the Toronto boy on July 30th, 1884 at Far Rockaway, just outside of New York, and the Canadian went down and out in the 22nd round. The champions, during an unbroken series of victories, handed a sleepy draught to Lablance on Lamont, Long Island on March 4th, 1886. Lablance, who would later prove to be the nemesis of his conqueror, was 4 years Dempsey's senior, and a great fighter he was. He took the quietus in the 13th round. The battling Irishman took part in many unique contests, but strangest of all was his encounter with Johnny Reagan on December 13th, 1887. This meeting was the climax of a much ill-advised bitterness between the backers of both camps. The ring was the dock of an old barge in Long Island Sound, and the test was a fight to the finish with bare knuckles. Truly, it was a battle of primitive men, but it was well to be remembered that the glove era of boxing was merely at its birth. The rounds were not yet set to time, and a knockdown replaced the gong. Knuckles flashed for a solid hour. 14 rounds had been fought under London prize rules when the barge, which had been securely mirrored by 2 stakes, was partly submerged by the tide. The strange ring was cut loose and towed into the Sound. Both the principals were about to resume when a small squall struck the ring and a heavy snow shower covered the slippery deck. A truce was called and the party went ashore. Someone suddenly remembered an old boathouse about 20 miles away, and a heavy drudge through driving snow brought the small body to the more cheerful surroundings. An obliging landlord, some hot drinks, and the men were soon trading punches again, with the onlookers sitting on the bar and shouting advice between drinks. Another 16 rounds and an almost hour of furious fighting were marked when words came the two policemen were down the road. Disdaining heavier clothing, the fighters plunged into the woods, and their followers followed a clearing amid the snow. Here Dempsey and Reagan fought to a finish. In the 45th round, the referee cried, "Time," but Reagan was unable to continue. It was the end of over 4 hours of heavy punching, with almost anything allowed except biting and kicking. No doubt some of our present-day champions would look rather sheepish at the prospect of a 4-hour mix-up with a 20-mile walk built in for a breather. These were men of true gladiator caliber. In August of 1889, Jack Dempsey lost his crown. It happened in San Francisco, and the winner was George LeBlanc. Jack's defeat was the sensational climax to a terrific bout in a setting typical of those prize ring days. A rudely constructed ring with its 4 plain posts, sagging ropes stood out under the blinding glare of unshadowing light. Frisco was as He-Man's town in those days, and many a rough joke was cracked with the waiters who answered the call for smoke and beer-laden atmosphere of the old pavilion. For 31 rounds, Dempsey had maintained an unbeaten front against his most powerful opponent, and held the heavier end of the points. In the 32nd round, the swarmy, thick-set Marine bound to the center of the ring, and the final act had begun. A clinch happened. A broke, and the champion shot a left and a right to the head. LeBlanc again hung on, and the crowd became sarcastic. 4 more clinches, and Dempsey was nonplussed. He was content to break away, drop his hands, and await the next clinch in LeBlanc's wrestling tactics. And then hands and await the next clinch in LeBlanc's wrestling tactics. And then the crowd woke up. At the 9th break, Dempsey dropped his hands and the Marine remained at close quarters. A half turn to the right and he swung completely around. A whirlwind right connected with Dempsey's chin and the pivot punch had landed. The Nonpareil sagged to his knees and dropped. He was out. The crowd gasped in complete, utter shock as the referee reluctantly awarded the laurels to the victor. And so the star of a great fighter set in Frisco. LeBlanc won the championship but lost his reputation. That should read, LeBlanc maintained the championship but lost his reputation because LeBlanc was overweight. Since that fateful August night, the pivot punch has never again been tolerated in the ring. The Kildare boy was bitter, but took his defeat like a sportsman. On January 14, 1891, he was outclassed by the great Bob Fitzsimmons, a man of superior strength and weight. Dempsey resistlessly gamed until the Cornishman put him away in the 13th round. It was apparent to all the former champions had seen his best days. He fought 3 more contests and suffered defeat at the hands of Australian Billy McCarthy. was held to a draw, and Tommy Ryan secured the victory on January 18th, 1895. Ryan was an ambitious, capable young man of 25 when Jack was a sick veteran who had overseen 32 years of ring in the bitter struggle for existence. On June 8th, 1895, 5 months after his defeat by Ryan, a benefit was given for this sick and poverty-stricken boxer. His friends sent him to Portland, Oregon, hoping that a change of air would aid him in his losing fight of tuberculosis. On November 1st, 1895, the poor, wasted body of the once famous Nonpareil answered the final call of time, and death was the victor. He lies buried far away from his native plains. Perhaps later on, the Killian erects a monument to those who took part in the stern fight. She shall not forget the great Jack Dempsey, one of the great gladiators of the squared ring. That was a reading I found from a old article, and it's a great way to introduce the Nonpareil champion, Jack Dempsey. So there's a few things I want to comment on there. So Jack Dempsey, I'm sure many of you may not know, that was not his original name. We're going to have a little reading here from referee Charley White, the famous referee in the Mustard Gate match with Jack Bonner. I was drawing a blank there. Okay. Charley White, famous referee, sprung up from the New York fans recently to a surprise. He was telling some about the great old Jack Dempsey fights. Great fighter, that fella, Charley White went on. As a great ring general, he was as heady of a fighter as ever lived. He won more than one contest when he was whipped simply because he used his brains and out-generaled the other fella. Did you know that his name was Kelly, not Dempsey at all? Well, it was. I know a lot of people will be surprised at that, but I know what I'm talking about, says Charley White, the famous referee. Now, White came after the Nonpareil era, and he did not referee any of Jack Dempsey's bouts that I know of. So, but I do believe he was early enough in the era that he knew what he was talking about, like just as he claims. Jack Dempsey suffered from an affliction known as Carrera, which was a mucus buildup in the nose. So after, the legend goes, after Dempsey's first fight, he got punched in the nose, and from that point on, he was never able to breathe out of his nose during a boxing match. And I seen an article stating that that he was exclusively a mouth breather, was the equivalent to having a 25-pound weight centered right on the top of your middle of your back, as it was such a handicap to have no nasal breathing that it was one of the most remarkable feats in the history of the ring, that he was able to be as successful as he was by exclusively only breathing through his mouth, which I'm sure a lot of people are not even aware of about Jack Dempsey. He also had a diminished hearing, so he was partially deaf, which made his voice sound rather odd because the way he spoke, because of his partial deafness. But Nonpareil was one of the most famous early fighters, in a lot of ways, he was even just as famous as John L. Sullivan. Sullivan was a little bit before him, but their eras are very parallel with each other. And Jack Dempsey was the opposite of John L. Sullivan in the fact that he was not a boastful fighter. He was very modest. And when he was getting referred to as the opponents coming up, he says, well, I intend to try my best. He would never put into the newspapers that he was superior and that this person was a nobody. He was very respectful of the other fighters, and in that sense is what one of the things that made him just maybe even more popular than Sullivan, because everyone respected his absolute gameness and the way he conducted himself with the modesty that he did as a successful champion. And many of these articles talk about Jack Dempsey when he's going through his exhibition tour during his sickness. This is the most famous thing that ever happens in their town, was to get a visit from the Nonpareil Jack Dempsey, as people from faraway states just came to see him do these boxing exhibitions and get a glimpse at the world-renowned gladiator that was Jack Dempsey. The first medical reports I seen of Jack Dempsey getting sick is in 1890. So I think August of 1889 is when he loses the fight to George Lablance. And from August to January of the following year is the period when he gets sick. During January of 1890, many of these people are not going to be aware of, but Nonpareil Jack Dempsey was pretty close to being on his deathbed. And they stated in the article there that I will post here, right now, here, that they don't think he's ever going to fight again. He's really just stricken by the tuberculosis that happens to his body. And he's in such dire need of money that he gets sick in January and has to fight the very next month in February just to get some income coming in, because he did not get the higher end of the purse of the George Lablance fight because he lost that. So he was in need of money, and he went into the fight with McCarthy actually very, very sick, just a matter of weeks after he was pronounced like near his deathbed. And it's my belief on reading these newspaper articles that the press loved and revered Jack Dempsey so very much that I really believe in my heart that they kept his illness quite a bit of a secret, because when you're reading through the newspaper articles, it is not mentioned at all. And they talk about after the bout in which he loses the Fitzsimmons, they never mention his illness in the months afterwards, because he was trying to still earn money for his sickness by doing these what he could boxing. So they kept his illness kind of a secret, because they wanted him still get draws for these matches. And I really believe that the press suppressed this information on purpose, because they were trying to do Dempsey a solid, do him a favor by having people come and see a person that they, wanted to believe was not sick. Because there's numerous mentions of benefits happening for Nonpareil Jack Dempsey, but nowhere does it indicate what the benefit is for, because that's how I'm trying to indicate that I think the press was really trying to keep it on the lowdown to try and give him the potential for earnings, because if they knew he was sick, the ring draws or the earning it's going to be greatly hampered. So I really believe that the entire press was maybe aware of it, and they were trying to keep it on the lowdown and a secret. So when he fought Bob Fitzsimmons and lost that match, he was a very sick person at that point. And as a matter of fact, he had just had a benefit of a matter of months before the Fitzsimmons fight, because he was in such dire need of money for his medical expenses. And he could not keep weight on. He was having very difficulty because the consumption and the weight loss is one of the side effects of the tuberculosis. And his weight kept dropping, his muscles were dropping. He had no ability to be able to train because his energy was so low. So when he actually took the ring to the Bob Fitzsimmons fight, he was in a pretty bad shape. Even though the press was trying to hide that information, like I'm trying to state here. I would believe that they were doing it on purpose. And that's how the tuberculosis kind of, once, I think in my mind that somewhere in the LeBlanc fight, something must have happened to really get him sick. I do believe that it happened during that fight, because it really, from that point on, he was sick. I don't believe he was sick during the match, but I think whatever it was that really pushed him over the edge, I think happened during that match, and led to his very weakened state from the future fights on. So I have a couple of readings that I want to do for this article, this YouTube video here, and I read one of the first ones. I have two more that I would like to broadcast at this point here, and I found both of them very interesting. The one will be his obituary lineup, because I like to try and read the boxers' obituaries, because they're beautiful summaries of the short careers that they have in a very concise summary. And then after that, we are going to actually hear from Nonpareil Jack Dempsey himself, as he gives a full newspaper interview, and he talks about his loss to George LeBlanc and what his feelings were about the match, and right from his own mouth, instead of hearing it from a summary of something that was written. There's no better source than directly out of his own mouth. So I'm going to do those two readings here, and I appreciate you listening. So I don't know if I mentioned, but that first article I read from was from a non-published article that doesn't exist anymore, and I found it through a link, and the Wayback Machine brought me to what I was looking for, and I thought it was a beautiful introduction for the boxer Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. Now this next article I'm going to read is kind of a obituary type of a thing, and this is written by the manager / referee Billy Roche. So in the mid 1940s, he's doing articles on older time fighters, and that were famous, and this is one of those articles, as I will try and read you most of them here. This is the 17th article in the series. 17. The original Dempsey broke in as a collar and elbow wrestler, but quickly became Nonpareil. Jack Dempsey, the original, was hailed by critics as the most perfect fighter of modern fisticuffs. At his peak, he was without a peer, thus the tag, the Nonpareil. Dempsey's real name, John Kelly, a cooper by trade, was one of the three celebrated Jacks of the history ring. Jack Twin Sullivan, Jack Dempsey, the Manassas Mauler, and of course, Jack McAuliffe. The LeBlanc swing stunned the fistic world. August 27th, 1889, when the Marine knocked out the great Jack Dempsey in the 32nd round in San Francisco. Dempsey took the bout as an exhibition without special training. LeBlanc outweighed him by 10 pounds, but Dempsey gave him an artistic trimming for 31 rounds. That was the situation when LeBlanc suddenly swung around on his heel with his arm outstretched. The back of the fist plopped against Jack Dempsey's jaw, knocking him colder than a loan shark's heart. This led to the pivot blow being barred. Dempsey made Fitzsimmons knock him out. Dempsey's last big fight with Bob Fitzsimmons took place in New Orleans, January 14th, 1891. In the 13th round, Ruby Robert pleaded with Dempsey to quit. He was being that badly beaten. A champion never quits, replied Nonpareil. You'll have to knock me out. Fitzsimmons mercifully obliged. Dempsey, whose parents brought him from Ireland when he was a very young age, was employed in a Brooklyn cooperage when he broke in as a collar and elbow wrestler at Harry Hill's famous resort in downtown New York in 1883. But after losing a match to Eddie Maheven in Revere Hall, Boston, he turned to boxing. Not such a pronounced shift in the days of London prize ring rules. Dempsey had not been fighting 3 years when he was recognized as the lightweight leader. Jack McAuliffe took over when he outgrew the class. The Nonpareil stood 5 foot 8 inches, weighed 150 at his best. Dempsey's battle with the young Johnny Reagan, December 13th, 1887, was waged in 2 separate rings. The first, pitched in a Long Island beach between what became submerged with water in the 4th round. And the battleground was moved 20 miles, and the fight finished in snow and cold. Dempsey won by a knockout in the 45th. Dempsey, born in County Kildare, Ireland, died young at 37 in Portland, Oregon. He was a sterling character and a fine instructor. Get mad, he used to tell pupils when sparring. You can't fight unless you're mad at the other fella. Jack Dempsey, the Nonpareil, always fought as though he were mad at the man in the opposite corner. Finally, in this last article, I'm going to read from the Oregonian, August 29th, 1889. And this is going to go through the direct aftermath of the George LeBlanc pivot punch and take you through the sentiments the following days here. And we're going to hear from Nonpareil Jack Dempsey himself in this article here. So I'm going to read it for you here. It's a bit long, but highly interesting. Very much like the commercial with Mean Joe Green. It kind of reminds me of that Coke commercial where he cheers him up and gives him a Coke. It is pretty similar here what happens here. The director, Michelle, roused him firmly by saying, "Cheer up, Mr. Dempsey. You're still the middleweight champion and the boxing instructor of this club. We'll stand by you. He's got to give you another match," he said to the dejected Jack Dempsey in the locker room. The Nonpareil Jack Dempsey shook his head mournfully. "No," he replied. "He'll never give me another show. I asked him if he would, and he said yes, but I'm afraid he'll never let me have another go." You were not down 10 seconds. You were on the rope in 7 seconds. It wasn't fair, broke in Denny Costagang. Again, Dempsey shook his head. Don't say that, Denny, he said. The judges said that it was right, and it must be so. The judges know what's right and wrong. And I was in such good condition, too, he concluded mournfully. Well, you're still the middleweight champion, Jack. You'll finally get plenty of fights, remarked young Mitchell. What's the championship? Replied Dempsey. It meant $5,000 to me. But then I've gone down. They'll never give me another match. Yes, they will, said Mitchell vigorously. This seemed to rouse the former champion. Get me another fight. Bother the championship. Any weight at all. Give me another one. Then for one brief moment he showed a bit of temper. I wasn't down, he said sharply. I was against the ropes and could have stood more. After saying this, his head dropped into his hands and he wept silently. For some minutes his friends could not rouse him. He finally stood up, however, and was rubbed down. His gaze wandered from face to face as he mourned. I was in such good condition, too. I was fresh as I am now. I had the fight in hand, was making it a waiting one, but couldn't get away from it. I suppose I was careless. I went down quick, but I felt as if I could come back. I gave him his own rules and gloves. He promised me another fight, but I'm afraid he won't give it to me. Just tell the world I went down, but I want another chance. His eyes rested on his trainer, Costagan. As he concluded, he flung his arm around his neck and said, It's all over, Denny. No words could console the Nonpareil's heart was broken. Several telegrams were brought in. Don't open them now, he said quietly, as he drank several glasses of brandy and water. He remarked, I didn't drink a drop during the fight, and I'm burning with thirst. Dempsey was dressed and prepared to leave the hall at 12:30 this morning. The great crowd, which had lingered outside the hall to get a brief glimpse at the great champion, gave him a hearty cheer as he entered the close carriage. Lablance did not fare so well. His appearance was greeted by cheers from his admirers, but as his hack was driven away, a hoodlum threw a stone at it. The missile did not enter the carriage as it struck the woodwork. Dempsey was taken at once to the room. Dempsey talks of his defeat. Dempsey was in good humor when the Oregon correspondent was admitted to the room by Dave Campbell this afternoon. Jack was in bed taking it easy. Besides a swollen nose, Dempsey shows but few marks of the battle. His nose is not broken, as supposed last night. Dr. McAllister examined it today and found that the cartilage had simply been dislocated. There was a slight bruise under the right eye, and the left was discolored. These were marks of the Marine's terrible right hand. That was the only blow LeBlanc hit me, said Jack with a smile as he ran his fingers over the sore spot. This is the first black eye I have ever received in a fight in my life. This fight had a different effect upon me than what I anticipated, continued Nonpareil Jack Dempsey, propping himself up with a pillow. I always thought that if I were ever beaten, I would go to the dogs, but I won't. I will not say that I will ever enter the ring again, but I will say that I am still on deck. People say I am discouraged and heartbroken, but I am not that kind of man. Are you willing to fight the Marine again? Was asked. Yes. You will have to see him about that. All depends on him now. He is the victor. He has promised me another show, and I hope he will keep his promise. Well, Dempsey was talking to the messenger. Dempsey smiled as he read the dispatch and remarked that his contract with the California club prevented his fighting outside of its walls. Several directors of the club were present today. Dempsey told them he would do what he could to offer another purse if LeBlanc would fight him again. He said that he would be ready any day. There is talk about a chance blow is all nonsense. When LeBlanc let fly at me, he did it to knock me out, and he got there. I saw the blow coming when it was 3 inches from me. I hesitated the 20th of a second whether to duck and clinch or retreat, and then I was struck. That hesitation cost me today $5,000. When I regained my feet after the fall, I realized that the ropes were my salvation, and I trotted to them to steady myself. In a moment, I was myself again. I was ready to go on with the battle, but time was up. My tactics would have been to clinch and duck and keep out of the way until the end of the round, when my seconds could refresh me. LeBlanc did not strike me with the glove. It was a blow from a naked wrist bone that floored me. Some of my friends say he used his elbow. The Marine. LeBlanc was the center of admiration in a group of sports and up and down resort today. I am satisfied now, he said. I trained hard for the fight, expecting to win, and at no time do I think I had the worst of it. Dempsey was just as hard of a hitter as ever, but he couldn't hurt me very much with those big gloves. When asked if he would meet Dempsey again, the Marine replied, I am perfectly willing to do so, but am in no hurry about it. I had to wait a long while to get a fight with him after my defeat, and I guess it will be about right if Dempsey now has to wait in the same manner. Well, Dempsey would end up waiting forever. He did all that he could to get a rematch with George LeBlanc. He even went to George LeBlanc's bar in San Francisco and tried to secure a match with him in person, face-to-face, as LeBlanc, I believe, was at the bar. And LeBlanc gave him the runaround. He said he wanted some easier fights, and he wanted no part of fighting Dempsey again. I think that after a while, he claimed he wanted to fight him, but he really, I don't think, ever intended to. He just wanted to look like he wasn't a coward, as he really immediately after the fight never wanted to fight again. So that was the defeat by Jack Dempsey. The pivot punch, Dempsey claims in here that he did not hit him with the glove. He hit him with the wrist bone, which rendered him so perfectly out of it. And he claimed there that I read that his friends claimed he used part of his elbow also into the match. So as I read it in the newspaper, they were kind of in a clinch and kind of coming out of the clinch when LeBlanc did the pivot move. So that is part of the reason why Dempsey wasn't expecting it, because they were just fresh out of a clinch when LeBlanc did the strange move to him and hit him with the back of the wrist bone. And it really sent Dempsey down and completely stunned him as he dropped like a log. But this is the first that I heard where Dempsey got up at the count of 7, he says, and he was against the ropes when the referee counted him out, which he should have been able to keep going on, as this wasn't Queensberry rules. This was London prize rules. So he would appear, even the fact that he got hit with an illegal blow, it would appear that he was cheated out of the match quite a bit there, as he certainly states that he could have gone on. Whether that is accurate or not, we don't know. But he states that he was still able to go on. He wasn't out, as from his own mouth. That's what he claims. So, in a way, you could claim that Dempsey really had no defeats of merit there. So, in this match, he loses the Marine in an illegal blow. I guess it later was determined illegal. It wasn't quite illegal at the time. They don't refer to it in the newspapers as being an illegal blow. There was no talk of getting disqualified. But he hit him with not even a full actual punch. He hit him with the back of the wrist, which is a rather odd way to be knocked out. So there's a asterisk there for his first loss. His second loss was to Fitzsimmons, which we're going to realize here he was definitely very sick with TB, tuberculosis, at the time of the Fitzsimmons bout. And by the time he actually faced Tommy Ryan, that was nothing more than a glorified exhibition, because they were doing exhibitions trying to generate income for Jack Dempsey. And that should not actually be considered a real match. That was an exhibition. And sadly, one of the most sad things about that is the press described the great Nonpareil as being drunk at the time. He appeared as if he was drunk and staggering around like a drunk man. But instead, Dempsey was not, in fact, drunk, because the press had hid the fact that he had tuberculosis. And he was in such a weakened state during the Ryan fight that it appeared as if he was drunk, and they had no idea what to make by Dempsey's horrible condition. They said he looked as if he had not trained at all. He was completely sickly looking, and there's no way that match should be counted as a legitimate loss for Jack Dempsey. That was nothing more than an exhibition. He had done many exhibitions previous to the Ryan bout, and that bout also I would consider an exhibition. He was doing the exhibitions to raise money for his medical expenses, trying to fight the tuberculosis. So, and one of the weird things, there's an argument to be made that Nonpareil Jack Dempsey actually really suffered a legitimate loss inside the ring. All three of his losses have pretty big asterisks next to them as far as a loss. And I found it interesting when you read that last article about the George LeBlanc match. They mention in there that his nose cartilage got dislodged and repositioned when the referee examined him. They said that the nose was not broken, but instead the cartilage shifted. And as we found out after this is when Jack Dempsey developed the tuberculosis. And I really believe that that shift of the nose cartilage might be a direct result of his illness that happens when because he really couldn't use his nasal cavity at all previous to that, but now it in fact made it quite a bit worse, or he really had trouble breathing, and the tuberculosis followed just a mere 5 months after the LeBlanc match. And January of the following year, the LeBlanc match was in August. January of the following year, he was on his deathbed, just about, from the tuberculosis. So it's an amazing career. It really there's a possibility that he never really lost squarely to any of the fighters he ever fought, and in so many ring battles. So it's a great way to be referred to as the Nonpareil, because he could make the claim that nobody ever beat him legitimately in the ring. And Jack Dempsey, your boxing profile is coming up.